You were born, you were given a creed, a religion, a name, a political affiliation, a color. You were given a title. You were given a language. Nothing about you is rigid. Everything has been given to you. So this idea of the pursuit and chase of autonomy is trying to figure out who do you want to be, not who are you, right? Well, you know who you are. The question is, do you want to become somebody different based off of the results that all these identities have yield for you? And most people have all these tags and these identities and this baggage, and their outcome in life is shit, right? So if I want to embody different things, I need to figure out who do I want to become? What principles do I want to embody? I used to be this idea of like being a patriot, right? Well, what is patriot, right? You would define patriotism differently than I did. So it's just the word, because people rally behind symbols, and the symbol that we're rallying behind is the idea of Capital Club, which is to build the largest decentralized entrepreneurial network in the world. And what does that mean? It's just a network. It's a club for people like you and me to elevate. And the reason I had the epiphany about kind of this conquest is that you can't do shit by yourself. You can't do anything by yourself. This idea of being a lone wolf doesn't work. The lone wolf has either been abandoned by his pack or his pack has been killed, right? The wolf doesn't go by himself. So people have been taught, indoctrinated, isolated their entire life. From the moment you're born, first grade, you're supposed to go home after you clock out of school. Keyword, clock out of school. You hop into public transport. You go back to your home. You eat your bullshit Cheerios. You go, as a little kid, 6 years old. You go, you close the road to your door, and you solve problems by yourself. Do you think billionaires, the kids of billionaires out here solving problems by themselves? They're out here taking public transport, that the way that they operate is the same way that peasants do? No, they're operating clans, groups, societies, organizations. And since I realized that I couldn't get it to the club, I'm building my own. And I am in the pursuit of developing myself, and hopefully my life is of inspiration to people, and that we rally together to pursue our fullest potential together. And I think that an army of one is just as bad as an army of none. You can't do it alone. You have to do it together.
So this club that you're building, is this an attempt to protect yourself from the other side, or is it an attempt to fight against the other side, like a revolution?
There is no fight. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to conquer myself. This, all I can control is what I do. I can't control what BlackRock's doing. I can't control what FTX is doing. I can't control what the SEC is doing. I can't control what Joe Biden is doing. I can control what I am doing. I'm focused on the conquest of myself, and that conquest will inspire others to conquer themselves. And if you can just focus on yourself, because if you actually are humble enough to recognize that most of the problems in your life are caused because of the things that you do, not the things that people do to you, now you become autonomous. And it doesn't matter the bullshit that's going on around you, you're still autonomous, and you can live your best life because you're pursuing your fullest potential. And yes, there's trials, yes, there's tribulations, yes, there's enemies. But I'm not focused on anything beyond training right now. I'm training, and my life is training, and that's how I view it. So we have this idea of building a dojo, right? And this idea of the dojo is we're all students together. There's different ranks, there's different positions, but we're students. We're all students of what the dojo represents, which is work ethic that's designed to pursue your fullest potential. So that's kind of what we live by, and we try to embody. G.
Yeah, and who are these people? Who are these evil people that are trying to keep us, remove our individuality and keep us isolated and alone and depressed and anxious? Who are these people?
So I wouldn't say it's a specific person, because I sat with billionaires. I've sat with people worth $3, $5, $13 billion to be exact. And they don't know what the fuck's happened. Like, I'm talking to them in real time. And a lot of these guys, are part of the system just as much as we're part of the system. They're just cogs in the machine, but they're bigger cogs. So I wouldn't individually point out one person, but I would say it's a systemic issue that the system in and of itself was rotten. And the reason it's rotten is because it's a system that's been created by people, and people are flawed. Therefore, the systems are flawed. And the longer that the system exists, the gaps get bigger and bigger and bigger. You start to see the problems. So what you're going to see right now is you're going to see a reset of the system. It's an intentional reset of the system from capitalism to techno-feudalism. I know that this is going to go over a lot of people's heads, but if you can just pause what I said
Can you explain that?
45 seconds and write down what I'm telling you. Is I'm telling you, in essence, the plan of the future. So it's not that you are going to change the plan of the future because you can't compete with people worth trillions and trillions of dollars. It's not going to happen. And I'm not in the business of fighting, right? I'm in the business of unity. And unity can exist, right? And it doesn't have to be combated. So what do I mean by a reset of the system? So a reset of the system is this idea that what the businesses nowadays, right, that are part of like the stock market, NASDAQ, all these things, their entire business model operating system is based off of making sure that we hit the earnings of the next quarter. So right now we have an entire economy that's based off of what are the results going to be in 4 months, right? There is no long-term perspective. People are just fucking leaning it. So the elites have realized that this is not sustainable. In order for them to preserve their wealth, they're going to have to reset the system. And in order to reset the system, they have to blend public and private industry. And this is going to happen through the nationalization of private companies and through banking systems. And what's going to happen is we're going to go into a potentially, hopefully not, unless you're well prepared, won't matter, into a techno-feudalistic system where feudalism was this idea that back in the day, the rich people own the means of production, they own the land, they own the crops, they own the armies, and therefore, because they owned everything, they control everything. There was no rules, there was no laws, they wrote it, right? And people, the slave, the peasants, they would work on the land, right? And they would receive a dividend off of the land, and they would have a home, and they would have their food. But they were a slave. And we're going to go back into a system where, like Carl Schwab said in the book that he wrote called The Great Reset, that you will own nothing and you will be happy, right? So people out here buying shit in the metaverse, right? Spending millions of dollars in the metaverse. Do you know I'm a big fanatic and an advocate for Web3 and NFTs and how they play into the real world, are buying into this garbage and this bullshit of existing in a realm that's a fairy tale and not really operating the real world. You know, you have people developing these online personas that are worth millions of dollars, developing these ecosystems online, but then the real world, what actually matters, what's keeping you alive, was getting fucked up by the minute. So they're keeping you distracted with bullshit, keeping you distracted with drugs, they're keeping you distracted with music, they're keeping you distracted with hoes, and all of this is programming. And you have, for example, this idea that who you are today, which goes back to what we were talking about, these identities and these labels that were given to you, just as labels were given to you, condition was given to you. And this conquest is not against any individual or any entity, but it's against ourselves and against the bullshit that has been kind of like dictating who we are ever since we were born. And if you can free yourself from the labels, you become limitless.
So you people would describe you as like kind of woke for having these ideas or like these beliefs. Like they would say you're crazy or you're insane if you're reading this, or if they're saying this. When did this all start to happen? Like what made you start to realize that the reality that we are in is like false reality, and that there's like a lot of control, propaganda, and conditioning going on by, you know, like a couple hundred people at the top? How did you realize it?
I mean, I've been one of those individuals that's always known something just wasn't right. It didn't fit. It didn't make sense. And the basis that I used as the measurement, right, was I looked at people's results of their life, right? So for example, I looked at my uncles and they would give me advice that I would look at their life. That's all I would look at is what are the fruits of this person's belief system. And I don't want that. So then I started looking at everything. I'm like, okay, perfect. Everybody's thinking this. I understand it's bullshit because of the outcome of their life, which is a logical train of thought. This isn't conspiracy, right? You don't want to follow people that have bad advice. And then the next thing you should be asking yourself is, where are they getting this advice from? What is the source of that advice? And does that source of advice also have influence in other areas of my life? And then you begin to realize that you're not free because the information that's being fed to you is a lie. And it's a lie, why? Because it's based off control for a desired outcome, right? Which is the outcome of we want all the money, all the resources, all the power, and you are just extendable energy for us to create our empires. That's the philosophy, and it's been happening since the dawn of man. This hasn't changed. Talk about Babylon, talk about Rome, talk about ancient Greece, Sparta, talk about the Chinese empires, talk about Genghis Khan. They're all in conquest mode And that means that you need slaves. You need people that are weak. You need, why do you think they put in China all these ideas, putting people through hunger strikes in the 50s and starving your people? Because that's how you keep people weak. You have to be able to control your people, just like North Korea does, right? You have to control your people. So that's what they're doing. But they realized that they've realized that they could do it in a more intelligent way. So I'm going to explain to you about the more intelligent way of control that people are under. Would you like me to show that?
Yep.
So they realized that you can't whip a slave into submission, right? You can't have an efficient and effective slave if you are beating him or if he feels oppressed. So what they realized is that they could do better and channel the energy of the slaves a lot better and get more slaves, not just the ones of which color they didn't like, but they could have all of them as slaves if they could fool them, if they could deceive them. And Sun Tzu says in the book The Art of War, his teachings on war, says the art of war is the art of deceit, right? And that the easiest way and the best way to conquer your enemy is by not fighting at all, right? So they realized that, what if we just fool people? What if you just fool people into believing that they need to work, hustle 24/7, and we paint this mirage and this picture of success so that we can continue building our empires? So they introduced the Federal Reserve, they introduced the fiat currency, they introduced propaganda machines, they introduced capitalism, they introduced consumerism, all these things, and people bought into it. And those are all the things that you need to reevaluate in your life to start on your journey.
So do you think that they introduce all these things to keep people distracted and fighting amongst themselves, kind of?
Yeah, it's where people focus their attention on, right? So let's say I want to steal all your computers, right? What would I do? I would go across the streets, cause some havoc that would cause you to be distracted. I would steal everything. You would come back and you'll be like, what the fuck happened? Right? So they do that at a macro level, right? Anytime that you see crazy shit happening in the world, a lot of times it's orchestrated.
Like the crazy.
I don't want to go into details on YouTube, but like on a personal level, there's a lot of the stuff that's happening on a regular basis. Wars, civil wars, proxy wars, coups, they're all organized.
Just like these big catastrophes in the world. You think that they're all just like
A lot of them.
Because you see that all the time, and it happened in Chicago too, where there was this bill that was trying to be passed that would like remove cash bail for people in jail, and it was like in the name of racism or something.
I mean, people can literally just study like things like MK Ultra and this idea of mind control and controlling people and forcing them to do things that they don't want to do. Dude, if through propaganda you desensitize people to go shoot motherfuckers, right? And you desensitize them through the music, people will literally go out and do it. So you can create a culture just by what you feed people. So what they realize is what we need to control is the means of production, the sources of consumption. Dude, if I cut off your internet, if I cut off your electricity, and I close down almost every grocery store in town, people would be savages in a week. They wouldn't know how to sustain themselves, right? Because they're so reliant and dependent on the system, right? That they are not autonomous. And this autonomy is the pursuit of freedom that everybody should be on. And it makes the journey super fucking dope.
Why should everybody be on that freedom, the pursuit of freedom? Like, what if people are just happy in the Matrix and they just happy with
Then they can start in the Matrix. Yeah, and that's totally fine. But I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to the people that are ready to be unplugged. Usually it's the people that are listening.
So you're Morpheus?
No, I'm not Morpheus, bro. I think we are all just players in the game, and we're all trying to figure it out and help each other at the journey. I'm just one more